For today's video, I am going to be making bread. So I need a mixing bowl. I need a liquid measuring cup, preferably one that says 2 cups. Or you could use 1 cup, but you would have to do it twice. You also need something to mix the dough with. A fork will do, but I have this fancy dough whisk. And you will need a teaspoon. 1 teaspoon measuring spoon. And for materials, you will need all-purpose flour, you will need yeast, and you will need some salt. Although if you want to be fancy, you can also use bread flour. And with all of that in mind, we will get a tasty batch of bread. Hang on, this isn't what it's supposed to look like. What happened? What happened?
Yeast and flour both live in the baking aisle, but I had to go to the spice aisle, 1 aisle over, to get the salt. So first, we're going to take our bowl. Look, it's a little bowl! So I'm going to set this bowl down and grab my kitchen scale. You could also do this with measuring cups, spooning, and leveling them each time, but I find using a scale is kind of easier. So put your bowl down onto your scale and turn it on. If the display doesn't read 0 grams, then you'll need to zero it because the weight of the bowl doesn't matter. And then we shall take our all-purpose flour and start to add some in. Struggling with the flour is optional, but I find it really adds to the experience. For this recipe, which I found on sallysbakingaddiction.com, you can find the link in the description, it calls for 423 grams of flour, or about 3 1/4 cup. I'm really using that recipe as a guideline, although my later results clearly show that instructions exist for a very good reason. The original recipe calls for bread flour, but not everybody keeps that stocked, and I like to use a little bit of both, just for funsies, I guess. If I remember correctly, which, let me just note, is never a guarantee, bread flour has more protein content than all-purpose flour, and that can help with the structure of the finished bread and enable it to trap more air when it's rising, giving you a chewier bread. Now that I've finished putting in my bread flour, I'm going to close that guy up and put him back from whence he came, and return to the old favorite, all-purpose flour. So I'm going to use the AP flour to fill the bowl up the rest of the way until I get to 423 grams. I'm going to close this guy up and then realize I don't have a clip for him. I'll deal with that later. That's a future me problem. The next ingredient you're going to add is yeast. I'm using fast rise yeast. Add in 2 teaspoons of instant yeast. And then we want 2 teaspoons of salt. And then put the salt and the teaspoon away to the side to put away later. And then I have here my fancy smancy dough whisk, but a fork would do just as well. I find when I'm not kneading, when I don't need to knead, that I want to make sure to mix the dry ingredients thoroughly just so that it's not unevenly dispersed, since this is the only mixing it'll get. And so I have in here 1.5 cups of water, and not that you need a thermometer, but just for the sake of telling you what everything is, this water is 91 degrees Fahrenheit. This recipe calls for cool water, but I've also seen recipes with similar ratios that call for warm water, not too hot or else you'll kill your yeast. And to my understanding, the warmer the water is, the faster your bread will rise. And I'm mixing this together to get something that is typically called a shaggy dough. And I'm starting to wonder if I should have used a bigger bowl. I've made bread with this recipe before. I should know this, shouldn't I? But alas, such is the way of things, and this will not be my last error of the day. So I'm going around the outside of the bowl and scraping to get all of that tasty, tasty flour. Don't eat raw flour, by the way. That's one of the many reasons you're not supposed to eat raw cookie dough. It's not just eggs, folks. So I'm trying to just get all of this into a mass. If you'll notice, it's all on my dough hook as I lift it up. And now, once I've got all of it off my dough hook as I care to, which is not all of it, it's just enough, I'm going to set it over here for later, for me to deal with later. And now we're going to grab some plastic wrap to cover our bowl in. You can also use a damp towel, and I believe the goal here is to not lose any moisture. So now we have a bowl of bread dough. So we're going to set it down and hope that it rises to the occasion. Hello again! Now that your bread has risen to the occasion, it is time to put it on to your baking sheet. So what I have here is a fistful of flour, and so I'm just gonna lightly flour my baking sheet just in the hopes that it will not stick. I'm gonna take off my plastic wrap and look at my jiggly boy, and then I'm going to hope that gravity will do its thing. Sometimes they tell you to punch down. Oh no, it broke. Sometimes they tell you to punch down your dough, and from what I've read, that's so you don't end up with really big air pockets. Because you might think, oh, this is kind of a weird thing this recipe wants me to do. It wants me to let it rise and get all those tasty, tasty bubbles that the yeast is making, but then it wants me to punch it down. So that is the reason why it wants you to punch it down. And I also feel like I've completely forgotten how to make bread. I've done this before. This is not my first time making bread. I'm apparently nervous to be on camera. So now we've got our loaf. It's a little uneven in the pan, but you know. So now we're gonna take this guy and put him in the oven that I have had reheating at 475 degrees. So now we are going to take our bread. We are going to put it into the oven. We're going to set the timer for 45 minutes.
Once your bread is done, you can go ahead and turn off the alarm and the oven. And then come see your, oh, that got kind of crispy. Boy, that got a lot crispier than I wanted. So, now we have our bread, which is a little bit more, oh goodness, oh no. This is what I get. So this is not what I planned to have happen today. I was thinking to myself, oh, you'll make bread, and it'll be great. You've done this before, it'll be fine. So this is apparently how not to make bread. The inside should be tasty though. It's just, I done messed up on the outside. This is me, 100% honest. So the outside's a little toasty, but the inside looks just fine. So I'm going to butter that. Yep, tastes like bread.
I was so confident going into this, but by the end of it I was left wondering where I had gone wrong. Well, I'll tell you where I went wrong when I go to sallysbakingaddiction.com and I scroll down to step number 5. It says, during this 45 minutes, preheat the oven to 475 degrees Fahrenheit, meaning they want you to let the bread rest and let it rise again after you've shaped it. Well, I got nervous and I saw 45 minutes and preheat the oven to 475, and I took those two numbers and I ran with them. So I put my bread in at 475 for 45 minutes. The problem is, if you were to scroll down to step 8, it says bake for 20 to 25 minutes or until crust is golden brown. But, I mean, I still got bread at the end of it, so who's to really say that this is a fail? Me. I am to say that this is a fail. Well, that's it, folks. Hope you enjoyed this video. Like, comment, and subscribe if you'd like to see more. Tune in next week to see me make my cherry berry preserves. Part 1 of making my cherry chocolate dirt pudding trifle. Well, hope to see you guys next time.